Most people live life feeling like pawns on someone else's chessboard. They're caught in roles, stuck in systems, and endlessly searching for answers outside themselves. But what if the entire game of life, every rule, every challenge, every win, was yours to rewrite? What if you're not just in the game, but you are the game itself? In this video, we're going to explore a radical shift in perception that will change the way you see reality, identity, and power. Stay with me until the end, because once you realize this truth, you'll never be controlled by illusion again. From the moment you were born, you were handed a name, a nationality, a language. You were given a gender, a religion, a family history. Before you had even formed a thought of your own, you were already dressed in the identity others had stitched together for you. And slowly, like a spider spinning silk, the illusion began to form, a delicate but deadly trap that you are a separate entity, navigating a world that is fundamentally not you. You were taught that you are the universe, but never that you are the universe. This is the first illusion, the grand deception. You were made to believe you are just a player dropped into a game you didn't design. And so you live your life making calculated moves, protecting your peace, hoping to survive the chaos of the board. But have you ever stopped to ask who built the board, who wrote the rules, and more importantly, who's watching you play? The greatest trick the game ever pulled was convincing you that you're not it. You see, ego, the sense of I, the self-image you've come to believe is you, is just a ripple in a vast ocean pretending to be the ocean itself. It's a story you've rehearsed for so long that you forgot you're the storyteller. And as the storyteller, you hold more power than you dare admit, but that power comes with a strange condition to access it. You must lose everything you think you are. But that's terrifying, isn't it? To let go of the boundaries between you and the world is like walking a tightrope with no net, blindfolded. What if you fall? What if you lose control? What if you dissolve into nothingness? But here's the catch: you are already nothing and everything. You've just been playing hide and seek with yourself. Now here's where it gets strange. Imagine you're dreaming deep in sleep, and in that dream, you forget you're the one dreaming. You begin to fear the monsters, the cliffs, the shadows. You panic, you fight, you beg to wake up. But what if the dream isn't trying to scare you but wake you? What if every pain, every conflict, every heartbreak was a nudge, a whisper saying, remember, this is you. The ancient mystics weren't fools when they said, A's within, so without. They weren't speaking in riddles. They were stating a fact too unbearable for the mind clinging to separation. Because if you are the world, then every war, every betrayal, every poison is also within you. That's hard to swallow. But here's where the power begins. Suspense builds when you realize what you feared all along, what you've blamed, avoided, hated, wasn't some external enemy. It was the fragmented echo of yourself, projected onto the screen of life. The game wasn't set against you. You were playing all sides. And just when you think you've figured it out, the game shifts again. Because here's the mystery. If you realize you're not just the player, but also the board, what happens to the concept of winning? If you're both the seeker and the one hiding, what does it mean to find anything? This is where the mind begins to short circuit, because logic collapses at the edge of this awareness. You've been trained to seek answers, but now you're staring at the mirror, realizing there's nothing but reflection. And the mirror doesn't lie, it just doesn't speak. That silence, that stillness behind the noise, is the doorway out. But it doesn't lead to a higher place or another world. It leads back to the source, the very place you never truly left. You see, the illusion of separation was never complete. It couldn't be. Like a painting of a cage without bars, the prison only existed because you believed in it. What if I told you right now, in this very moment, the borders between you and everything else are already dissolving? What if the distinction between your thoughts and the wind outside your window is thinner than you ever imagined? Could you trust that? Could you dare believe that you were never just a player dropped into someone else's simulation, but the author of the entire code? That question is the key, comes with a price. Because once you open that door, there's no going back. You'll never be able to see the world as separate from you again. And once you see that, we grow up thinking the rules of life are carved in stone. Laws of nature, laws of society, laws of morality. They feel ancient, unbreakable, cosmic in their authority. But rarely do we stop to ask where these rules actually come from. Who decided what's right? What's wrong? What's normal? What's success? What's failure? Were these truths delivered by thunder from the skies? Or did they emerge silently, like myths whispered between sleeping gods? The truth is much stranger and far more disorienting. The rules you live by, your expectations, your boundaries, your fears, were written by you. Not the conscious you, perhaps, but the deeper self, the one beneath the masks, behind the scenes. The part of you that plays the game while pretending not to know the ending. Consider this: every belief you have about what's possible is shaped by a rule you've accepted, often unconsciously. You can't do that. You must be like this to be loved. You must have this to be worthy. These are not truths. They are codes, scripts etched into your mind, often so long ago you don't remember when or why. But they control you just the same, like a puppet dancing to strings it can't see. And what's worse, these scripts were often inherited, passed down by those who never questioned them either. Parents, teachers, culture, religion, they handed you their rule book and said, play by this or suffer. And so, like a dutiful actor, you learned your lines. You obeyed, you played safe, you feared mistakes. And all the while, the real author inside you, the one who could have written a different game, was silenced. But here's the twist: the moment you realize the rules were never real is the moment the game begins to change. Imagine you're inside a maze, running tirelessly, hitting dead ends, searching for the exit. You think you're trapped. You believe in the walls. But suddenly you notice something. The walls shift when you're not looking. They shimmer like illusions. And then it hits you: the maze is a projection, not a prison. You built it. You forgot you built it. And every turn you take is really just a reflection of what you think you deserve. This is where the suspense begins to crawl under your skin. If you wrote the rules and you're stuck in suffering, what does that say about you? Why would anyone design a game full of pain and limitation? Why sabotage your own joy? And here comes the uncomfortable answer: because you believed you had to. You believed suffering was the price for love. That failure was a sign of weakness. That freedom was dangerous. Somewhere, somehow you bought the story that you must earn your right to be whole. And so, you wrote the game accordingly: prove yourself. Sacrifice. Conform. Be good. Be strong. Be normal. Be better. Be someone. But who decided the prize was worth the pain? The haunting possibility is this: your suffering is not random. It's not meaningless. It is, in many ways, your own creation. Not because you wanted it, but because you believed in the rules that created it. And that means, here's the terrifying beauty of it: you can change the rules. You can rewrite the code, but only if you're willing to dismantle everything you thought was real. And that's where most stop, because changing the rules means admitting you've been living inside a cage with an open door. It means letting go of the comfort of blame. It means realizing there's no game master in the sky keeping score. You are the judge, the jury, the prisoner, and the executioner. All of it you. But if that's true, then what else have you created without realizing it? Every toxic relationship, every limiting belief, every dream you abandoned. What if they all emerged from the same unexamined blueprint? What if underneath it all, you are not the victim of this life, the author of its design? This question doesn't offer comfort. It offers power. But power is terrifying when you've spent your life believing someone else had the remote. The moment you grab it, the moment you dare to press a different button, the world shifts. The simulation flickers. The characters behave differently. Synchronicities unfold. And suddenly, life doesn't feel like a prison anymore. It feels like a play you're just starting to direct. Here's the catch: just when you think you've cracked the code, it evolves. The rules change again. Because the game is alive. It learns with you, and what you once thought was the edge of understanding becomes the floor of the next illusion. Each realization births another mystery. Each awakening demands another layer be stripped away, and deep beneath all of it, something waits, not with answers, but with silence, watching, laughing, remembering. Spend our lives chasing control of situations, people, emotions, even fate itself. We plan, we prepare, we calculate. And when the plan unravels, we panic, as if life breaking from our script is a personal betrayal, as if we ever truly held the reins. But here lies the paradox that few dare to confront. The more you try to control life, the more it controls you. And the moment you think you're in command, you've already been deceived. There's a peculiar magic trick going on here. You're led to believe that by tightening your grip on reality, you're mastering it. That by disciplining your emotions, managing your time, and protecting your image, you're somehow winning the game. But who decided what winning looks like? Who drew the finish line you're so desperate to cross? And why does it always seem to move just out of reach? The answer is chilling in its simplicity. The idea that you're in control is part of the illusion that keeps you captive. It's the carrot dangled before the donkey, the false prize that ensures you never stop running. Because as long as you believe you're the master of the game, you won't notice the strings tied around your wrists. And here's where it gets truly eerie. Those strings aren't pulled by some external puppet master. They're pulled by your own need to feel certain. We mistake control for safety. We think if we can just figure everything out, if we can map life perfectly, we'll finally be free of chaos. That very obsession with order becomes its own prison. You become afraid to improvise, terrified to risk, unwilling to trust what you can't predict. You script every conversation in your mind, calculate every move, rehearse every version of what could go wrong. And so the spontaneity of life, the wild, electric pulse of it disappears. All that's left is repetition and fear. But what if the game was never meant to be controlled? What if it was always about surrender? Consider this: every major transformation in your life, every moment that truly changed you, came not from control but from its collapse. Breakups, death, betrayal, loss, epiphanies that hit like thunder. These weren't carefully arranged scenes in your timeline. They were ambushes, divine glitches. And yet, they awakened something in you. They exposed your rawness. They stripped away the masks. They taught you truths no manual ever could. And if you look closely, you'll see it's always been that way. You don't learn trust by controlling others. You learn it when everything falls apart and someone stays. You don't learn strength by avoiding fear. You learn it by walking through fire, shaking, doubting, but refusing to run. You don't discover who you are by crafting a perfect identity. You discover it when that identity shatters and something deeper emerges through the cracks. But here's where the suspense twists tighter. If surrender is the real key, then why does everything in you resist it? Why do you cling to control like a lifeboat in a storm? Because control gives the illusion of meaning. It tells you there's a purpose in the plan, that someone is keeping score, that there's a formula to follow. And letting go of that illusion means confronting a truth far more terrifying. That meaning is something you must create, not uncover. That life doesn't owe you an explanation. That the only guide you've ever had is the whisper within you that you've spent years trying to drown out with certainty. So what happens when you stop trying to win? When you stop trying to be right, to be safe, to be in control? What unfolds in that quiet space where the game stops being a game and becomes something else entirely? Something alive, breathing, watching you as intently as you watch it. You begin to see that life is not a puzzle to be solved but a dance to be joined. Not a war to be won but a play to be performed. And suddenly, the world stops being a threat and starts becoming a mirror. It reflects your thoughts, your fears, your projections. And the tighter you grip, the more it recoils. When you open your hands, when you stop needing to know, you begin to flow with it, not against it. And just when you think you've grasped this, the illusion deepens. Because even surrender can become a mask, a role to play, a strategy. You tell yourself you've let go, but secretly you're still holding on. You say you're free, but you're chasing the feeling of freedom. You pretend to trust, but only because it's another move in your spiritual chess game. So what, then, is real surrender? What does it mean to truly relinquish control? Not to gain something, but because there is nothing to gain. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to be the one who plays the game, writes the game, or cheats the game, and simply became the game itself? From the moment we awaken into consciousness, we are conditioned to believe that we are the thinker of our thoughts, that there is a central, concrete, sitting behind the eyes, steering the ship, making decisions, analyzing reality. This becomes the narrator of our life. It says, I am anxious, I am sad, I need answers. And we believe it. We take its word as truth. We defend it, obey it, and live as if it were our ultimate identity. But what if this is nothing more than a clever illusion? Think for a moment. Where do your thoughts come from? Do you sit there and manufacture them, one by one, like a craftsman shaping clay? Or do they arise on their own, like clouds forming in the sky, appearing without your consent, drifting across the vast inner screen of your mind? You don't know what your next thought will be until it arrives. And yet, we claim authorship over every mental whisper, every image, every internal voice. We say, I thought this, I decided that, I figured it out. But did you? Or did it just happen? This is where the curtain starts to pull back. This is where the game becomes eerie. Because the truth is unsettling. You are not thinking your thoughts, they're thinking themselves. They arise from a deeper substratum of consciousness, a place you cannot see and cannot control. They visit you like dreams do in sleep, without warning, without permission. And just as dreams can delight, disturb, or deceive you, so can these thoughts that you mistake for your own voice. So then what are you, if not the thinker? You are the field in which thoughts appear and disappear. You are the awareness in which anxiety erupts and then vanishes. You are the still space behind every mental storm, the eye of the hurricane, the unmoved mover. Not the contents of consciousness, but consciousness itself. This realization is subtle, yet once it touches you, it never leaves. Because from that moment on, you begin to see the joke. You begin to watch the mind run its endless loop, doubting, planning, comparing, fearing, and you recognize it for what it is: a stream, a process, not a person. But this awareness is not passive. It's not a blank void. It has an intelligence, a depth, a watchfulness that cannot be taught. It doesn't need to think in order to understand. It doesn't need to speak in order to know. And it certainly doesn't need to control in order to be free. The awareness that you are is not some cold observer. It is presence itself. It is the light in which the game is illuminated. Yet, here's where the suspense twists once again. The moment you glimpse this awareness, your mind panics. It doesn't want you to linger there. Because if you are not your thoughts, then what happens to the story? The name, the past, the goals, the fears, all of it begins to dissolve. And what remains? That question terrifies the mind. It cannot function in a reality where it is no longer the king, so it distracts you. It tempts you. It says, "This is nonsense, be logical, get back to thinking," and most people obey. But not you, because you're still here listening, watching. You've tasted the edge of something immeasurable. And that taste has awakened a question far more powerful than any answer. What is it that is aware of all this? What is it that watches the thought without identifying with it? What is it that feels the emotion without drowning in it? This awareness cannot be named because it exists before language. It cannot be located because it is the space in which all locations appear. It cannot be grasped because it is not a thing. And yet, it is more real than the body, more intimate than thought, more eternal than time. This is where the game of being truly begins to unfold. Because once you know that you're not the thinker, the entire architecture of selfhood begins to tremble. You are not your name. You are not your history. You are not your desires, your achievements, your failures. These are garments, costumes, roles in a play. And the actor has begun to awaken in the middle of the performance, staring into the audience, wondering who wrote this script and why. This is the beautiful terror of awakening. It strips you of the lies that kept you comfortable. It burns down the house you mistook for home. But in the ashes, you find something unspeakable. A freedom that doesn't need permission. A silence that sings. A presence that was never born and will never die. It's not somewhere else. It's not someone else. It's here now. Always. Most people live as though the universe is something that happened to them, as though they arrived here by accident, born into a world of rules, limitations, systems, and struggles that they had no hand in shaping. They move through life like pieces on a board, playing a game they never agreed to, obeying laws they never wrote, trying desperately to win according to someone else's definition of victory. It's a disorienting experience, a bit like being dropped into a complex game without instructions, and worse, without knowing whether it's even possible to win. But what if the rules weren't foreign? What if the board wasn't designed by someone else? What if you, beneath all your masks, your identities, your memories and habits, were actually the one who constructed the entire thing? From the players to the pieces to the prize itself. This is the secret that lurks behind the curtain of all experience, that the world is not a separate thing you must figure out or conquer, but an expression of something much closer, much more intimate, your own mind in disguise. Yes, the same mind that gives you thoughts and dreams, worries and joys, is not just observing the game, it is projecting it. Reality, as it appears, is the visible surface of your invisible inner world. The tension you feel is not just circumstantial. It is a message from the designer to the character, like a breadcrumb left in a forest to guide you back to the source. This is where things begin to shake. Because if you entertain this idea, even for a moment, everything changes. If you are not merely in the game, but of the game, if the cosmos is not a machine but a mirror, then your suffering, your longing, your sense of isolation all start to crack open. What was once random becomes poetic. What was once meaningless becomes symbolic. The accidents become messages. The delays become timing. The obstacles become clues. You begin to suspect that the people you meet are not strangers but archetypes, that the circumstances you face are not punishments but puzzles, that even your deepest pain is not a malfunction but a design, crafted not to break you but to wake you. Now, this is where the suspense tightens, because the mind begins to rebel. It says, surely I wouldn't create suffering for myself. I wouldn't design heartbreak, failure, and yet, consider your dreams. When you sleep, you invent entire worlds, terrifying, ecstatic, surreal, tragic. You invent monsters that chase you, lovers that leave you, cliffs you fall from. You cry, you flee, you shout, but it's all you. The entire dream is your mind at play, and when you wake, you understand. You see the purpose, the metaphor, the lesson. What seemed cruel while dreaming becomes a message once awake. So what if waking life is no different? What if your entire reality is a higher-order dream? An elegant play designed by you, not as punishment, but as a journey back to remembering what you truly are. A mystery that must first confuse you before it can enlighten you. A maze that must trap you before it can reveal the way out. After all, what is a game without risk? What is a play without conflict? What is a revelation without first being hidden? As this realization deepens, the walls of separation start to dissolve. The enemy becomes your own shadow in disguise. The failure becomes your own wisdom wearing a mask. You begin to see yourself everywhere, not the ego, self, but the deeper self, the dreamer behind the dream, the playwright within the play. The world becomes symbolic, not literal. Not just a thing to survive, but a work of art to interpret, a cosmic riddle, a divine hide and seek. You may wonder, why hide at all? Why create a game where you forget your power, your authorship, your infinite nature? The answer is one that echoes in silence, because there is no joy in simply being. It must be discovered. There is no glory in light without darkness. There is no adventure in perfection without a path to it. The thrill is in the remembering. The bliss is in the unmasking. The liberation is in the shock of realizing you were never bound at all. But the most thrilling twist is yet to come. Because once you awaken to this game within the game, once you truly understand that you are not only the player and the observer, but also the level designer, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The world responds differently. Reality bends more easily. People speak in synchronicities. Obstacles shift as though aware of your awareness. You stop being a character moved by fate and become the author of fate itself. You cheat the game not by breaking it, but by realizing it was never separate from you to begin with. So now you've journeyed through the illusion, cracked open the mirror, and peeked behind the curtain. You've seen that life is not happening to you. It's happening through you. You are not a prisoner of fate, nor a pawn on someone else's board. You are the dreamer dreaming the dream, the painter inside the painting, the player who wrote the rules. The fear you once held was never against the world, but against your own forgetting. The suffering you endured was not meaningless. It was the sacred veil you placed over yourself so that rediscovering the truth would feel like coming home. And that truth is this: you were never just a character in this story. You are the author, the stage, the light, the shadow, and the silence in between. What happens next is entirely up to you. Because now you remember. And once remembered, you can never truly go back to sleep.